Hello, and you made it to task number 2. So I'm going to walk you through the next 2 things that I need you to do. After this video, you're going to see that I have a worksheet that is going to look similar to this. It's going to have the first 7 of the 42 most common roots that you can write down, and on the next slide, 8 to 14. What I'm going to do today is discuss what roots are, as well as give you the first Latin root. But I wanted to discuss how you will be filling out that worksheet. The worksheet is divided up into parts, into the root of the day, the English meaning of that root, and English derivatives or words that come from that root. Example that we talked about in our last video is uni. Uni is a Latin root, and it means, the English meaning means one. Then 2 words that come from uni are unicorn, because it has one horn, and unibrow, because you'd have one brow. So those are 2 English derivatives. Derivatives is just a fancy word that means a larger word that comes from a smaller root. Make sense? Awesome. So I'm going to get into what roots are a little bit deeper, as well as your first one. So you're going to be going on to your graphic organizer after this video and filling in the actual one for number 1. Don't fill out uni. That's not number 1. I just didn't want to spoil it for you. Okay, so let's go over to that. So we're going to be learning about the 42 most common Latin roots. And the first thing is something that I can embarrass myself with. It is the roots rep. This isn't actually a thing. I'm going to try my best. Feel free to join me. Feel free to just laugh. That is fine. That's why I do this. All right, you ready? Drum roll. Latin is a language that has a bad rap. It delivers lots of benefits right into your lap. It isn't a dead language like some folks say. In fact, we use it every day. Yeah, I know that was lame. That's okay. Let's continue. So all of the English words we have, 60% of the English words we have derive from Latin. And 90% of English words with more than 2 syllables have a Latin root in them. So we are going to be learning about root words. Another name for root words is a base word, which we see in the middle of this bicycle. Then in the beginning, it is like the front wheel is a prefix. It is a part of a word that goes before the base word. And suffix is a part of a word that comes after the base word or the root word. So root word means it can stand alone. For instance, afraid. You can put a prefix in the beginning of it that says un, which means not afraid anymore. So you're changing the meaning of the word depending on if you're putting in a prefix or a suffix to that base or that root. So let's take a look at our first Latin root. The first Latin root actually is 2. So on your graphic organizer, you're going to have to write down 2 underneath the roots. So it doesn't go into box 1 and 2, it goes into box 1. You're squeezing 2 words in there. So you're writing down ANN and ENN, an. And they mean year or yearly. So your English meanings are year and yearly. Get it? You can come back to this video to write your notes. From an, we get words like anniversary. Anniversary is a romantic occasion that happens to celebrate relationships every year. Annual is something that happens once a year. For instance, a birthday or a holiday. Biannual means happens yearly, but bi means 2, so it means that it happens twice a year. For instance, going to the dentist, you're supposed to go to the dentist twice a year. Centennial. This has another lovely root that we're going to get into, cent. Cent actually means 100. So if we're putting them together, centennial literally means every 100 years. And another word for this that you may have heard is century. Century also means every 100 years, but that will come later. Millennium. Now this one should sound familiar to you. Mele actually means 1,000. So millennium means every 1,000 years. So when it hit 2,000 marks, that meant it was another 1,000. Millennial. A millennial talks about a person or is a person that was born right before the change of that millennium. So usually somebody between like 1982 to the 2000 mark, a little after that 2000 mark, would be considered a millennial because they were born around the millennium. And last but not least, a perennial is a flower that grows every year. So what my goal is for you guys is to go on to the next link that I provided for you, which is going to be in your modules that you can easily go back to underneath Roots. So you can find it two-way, through my announcements and underneath your modules. You can always go back in. It is editable, not edible. That means you eat it. But please go back every day to that organizer and fill it out. You do not need to make a copy. I already made individual copies for you. So you're going to come back here. You guys are going to write in your own one, ANN, ENN in the first one, meaning year or yearly in the second English meaning, and 2 words from my video that you want to use. Feel free to go back so you get the spelling. All right, that's all I have planned